Hi, this is going to be video 3. It will be out of sync with the other videos. I don't know what happened, but I somehow deleted it. But I wanted to let you know, in one of the videos I was talking about the censorship of vaccine information, research, also about how a lot of the books are going, I've seen them on Amazon and on Books going for like $200 up to $900. And what I failed to mention is that those are out of print books that are going that high, and they're just not wanting that information to get out there. And I think too, because they are out of print, they feel like maybe they could get that much money. I don't know how, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So this is video 3, and the title is "Too Many Shots?" ? Recall that most anti-vaxxers prefer as few vaccines as possible for their children, 0 if possible. There are some vaccine manufacturers that would of course prefer you to take as many as possible. I would assume most people, and this may include you, want a common sense number of vaccines, no more or less than what is reasonable. How do we decide what is reasonable? The obvious path would be to decide what vaccines are problematic, and if there is a vaccine for them, make a decision as to whether the risk and cost of administering the vaccine outweighs the risk and cost from the disease. Sounds fairly simple, doesn't it? The vaccines most children receive today are not decided on this way. Many shots on the schedule are diseases which were once problematic many years ago, but due to improvements in sanitation and medicine ceased to be a problem before vaccines were developed for them. They were simply added because a vaccine had been successfully produced. It's like the old saying, when you have a hammer, everything has a nail. Some vaccines are physically combined with other shots simply because the manufacturer can get away with it. It is certainly more convenient to get 1 injection instead of 3, but when the other 2 are not vaccines that you really need, it feels like you are being taken advantage of. Because vaccines contain some ingredients we'd rather not inject into our children unless absolutely necessary, these combo vaccines pose a big problem. I would say a huge problem. Depending on how you count, the current childhood vaccine schedule in the United States suggests around 72 vaccines for your child. This is more than any other country in the world. Why is this? Does the U.S. struggle with more diseases than other countries? Is our sanitation and medical care inferior? Not at all. The government agency that creates the vaccine schedule knows that other countries are likely to follow their guidelines, and as a result works hard alongside their pharmaceutical colleagues to add as many vaccines as possible to the schedule. For example, most countries don't recommend the hepatitis B shot administered to infants at birth in the United States. The vaccine was originally developed for drug users and other people at high risk for hepatitis B, and those that are sexually promiscuous. Because a pregnant woman is routinely tested for this disease, her newborn, who is not likely to be sharing intravenous needles and having sex, can confidently be ruled out for this shot. But in the United States, every infant born in a hospital is routinely given this vaccine minutes after birth, even if the mother tested negative for the disease. This vaccine wasn't put on the childhood schedule because hepatitis B was killing thousands of infants in the United States. It was put on the schedule because there weren't enough high-risk people opting for the shot. Even if the hepatitis B vaccine was an innocuous shot with little risk, I would find it objectionable. Stabbing an hour-old infant in the foot or leg and injecting something into them for no reason bothers me. Unfortunately, the hepatitis B vaccine contains aluminum, an ingredient that we will find out is something you would never want injected into your child. So far, few other countries have followed this outlandish practice, thank God. If you have a baby in nearly any other country, They would not dream of injecting a 1-hour-old infant with the hepatitis B vaccine. The mother would have been tested for it, and as the disease is nearly always the result of sharing drug paraphernalia or having unprotected sex, the infant is unlikely to get it. In the U.S., if you choose to do what most other countries do and avoid this vaccine for your child, you will be called an anti-vaxxer. The chickenpox vaccine is another example of a vaccine that exists on the childhood schedule solely because of overzealous government health officials and industry lobbyists. Chickenpox is a trivial childhood disease that parents had no fear of. In fact, many children were purposely sent to neighborhood parties in which with other infected children in hopes of their children catching chickenpox. No one, besides perhaps the pharmaceutical executive, was begging for a chickenpox vaccine. After it was created, it was predictably added to the recommended childhood schedule. Like hepatitis B, many countries don't recommend the chickenpox vaccine. They gladly allow their children to get chickenpox naturally and enjoy a lifetime of immunity for free and without essentially no risk. In the United States, if you choose to do what most other countries recommend and skip this shot for your child, you will be labeled, guess, an anti-vaxxer. Are you beginning to see why I embrace the label? Making informed decisions about your child's health can be challenging. There are many shots on the childhood schedule that are trivial diseases no one wanted a vaccine for in the first place. Others are holdovers from 50 years ago that haven't been removed simply because they make the manufacturer extra money, and no one has complained loudly enough. When you see many of these shots aren't necessary at all and are simply padding the wallets of pharmaceutical companies, you may begin to question all of them. Take a page from many European countries. Their children receive far fewer vaccines than U.S. children, yet they aren't suffering massive outbreaks of deadly disease. What do they know that we don't? And another thing that, I don't know if I mentioned it in another video, but I had 3 to 5 vaccines, or children had 3 to 5 vaccines when I was little, and yet, and that's when they thought that one shot provided lifelong immunity, and we didn't get boosters, and there's been no deadly outbreaks of any of these diseases. People will get well, it's not even a disease, an infection. People will get these infections, but then they get over it within a week and they have lifelong immunity, and they don't have all these toxins that being injected into their bodies that cause autoimmune diseases and neurological problems and even death. So that's something that we really need to think long and hard about. Why is it that there's 72 on the schedule now when back then there was 3 to 5, and yet we've had no deadly outbreaks? So anyway, that's the end of video 3, and the beginning of, let me see here, video 4 will begin with, what diseases do you fear? Question mark. Thank you for watching.